My termination lasted under 5 minutes. No advance notice, no justification, merely rehearsed phrases from someone who considered me expendable. Yet the danger of undervaluing individuals like myself is that such actions inevitably return to haunt you. I recall precisely when everything commenced. It occurred on a Thursday morning at 8:12 a.m., and I stood beside the third-floor espresso maker, watching the final drops of oat milk descend into my travel cup. The workplace maintained its tranquil atmosphere, that soothing quiet preceding the avalanche of conferences and digital notifications. My device chimed with a schedule alert, 9:30 a.m. internal preparation, Paragon Global Agreement. 7 months of my leadership had gone into that negotiation, a $50 million cross-border alliance that could propel our organization worldwide. I had journeyed to Zurich twice, managed coordination across 5 time zones, and reconstructed the entire deal framework when their legal department withdrew at the 11th hour. That accomplishment filled me with pride, not from craving recognition. I had received little of that recently, but because I understood its significance. Midway through stirring my beverage, Ethan appeared. He offered no morning greeting, didn't even acknowledge my presence. His movement suggested ownership of the space, and in certain respects, he nearly possessed it. Ethan Sinclair, 27 years old, recently imported from a defunct startup and conveniently the CEO's nephew. 3 months in the office, yet he already displayed his nameplate outside a corner suite with a small following of sycophants murmuring about next-generation leadership. He stopped at the refrigerator, retrieved a protein drink, and without glancing toward me stated, "Brooklyn, I require you in human resources immediately." That concluded it. No background, no pleasantries, no visual connection. I blinked. "HR?" "Correct," he responded flatly. "You'll need your laptop." I studied him momentarily, attempting to decipher his tone, his motivation, anything. His expression remained unreadable, disconnected, as though reciting from someone else's script. Still bewildered, I trailed him through the corridor, the tension in my chest intensifying with each stride. I walked past recognizable workstations, individuals I had guided, teams I had constructed. Nobody met my gaze. Upon entering the HR office, Marlene, our people director, was present. She displayed no warmth either. "Brooklyn," she commenced, "this won't require much time." Recognition dawned. "We're implementing strategic adjustments," Ethan interrupted, arms folded, "and your position has been classified as surplus in the revised structure." Surplus. 11 years with this organization. I had established the entire client services division from scratch, negotiated over 100 agreements, preserved more clients than I could enumerate, and labored through holidays while suppressing tears throughout my divorce. Now I was surplus. Every fiber in my body tensed, each cell pulsing with fury and incredulity. Yet I refused to grant him that satisfaction. I didn't weep. I didn't protest. I maintained direct eye contact, smiled with steady politeness, and declared, "Understood." That instant marked when fear abandoned me. I collected my belongings silently while my team observed from behind their monitors, shifting uneasily, sensing something amiss. I offered a subtle nod to the junior associate I had mentored the previous year. She appeared ready to cry. Silence prevailed. I departed the building without a backward glance, though internally I blazed. Not with hatred, not yet. Something deeper consumed me, a solitary question echoing in my mind. Why now? Why terminate me without warning mere days before the most crucial deal in our company's existence? And why did his decision seem so poorly considered? The journey home blurred together. I cannot recall the traffic signals or the radio, only my grip on the steering wheel as if it were my sole anchor to reality. My hands trembled, but my expression remained composed. Too composed. That particular calm emerges only when your mind enters shock. I entered my driveway and remained seated, staring at the entrance as though it belonged to a stranger. 11 years I had devoted more of myself to that company than to anything or anyone. birthdays overlooked, vacations canceled, responding to client communications with my laptop open in hospital waiting areas. I wasn't merely invested, I was embedded. And they dismissed me as if I were temporary. I changed from my professional attire, prepared coffee, and settled on the sofa. Still in disbelief, the quietness in my apartment felt overwhelming. I replayed Ethan's words repeatedly. "Your position has been classified as surplus." His delivery suggested he was reading from cue cards, as though someone had instructed him to say it without full comprehension of its meaning. Yet what disturbed me more than the dismissal was its timing. I wasn't merely handling any agreement. I was directing the agreement. The Paragon Global contract wasn't an inherited project. I had created it. Months of navigating cultural subtleties, foreign legal structures, and a notoriously demanding executive team had passed. We were days from final execution. I alone on our side maintained direct access to their leadership, yet I was gone. Why? I lifted my phone and examined the screen. No missed communications, no messages, not from HR, not from the CEO, not even from the team I supervised. The silence spoke volumes. Then at 7:42 p.m., my device buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Brooklyn? I froze. Graham Whitmore, the CEO. "I just discovered what occurred," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Why weren't you in the Paragon call this morning?" "Because I no longer work there," I replied flatly. A lengthy pause. "Ethan terminated you?" he asked, as though he couldn't believe his own words. Apparently, my role was no longer required. Another pause, then the sound of papers rustling, drawers opening, a quiet curse under his breath. "Jesus," he muttered. "Did he even examine the Paragon contract?" I sat upright. "What do you mean?" "You're the designated negotiator on the deal. That clause was added specifically to protect the agreement's integrity after what happened with the Corel merger. We couldn't risk another last-minute personnel change." I blinked. "So no one else can complete it?" "Not without your signature. Not legally, not diplomatically. Paragon insisted on it. They appreciated your approach, said you made them feel understood." I remained silent. He continued, his voice lower now. "Brooklyn, he didn't read the contract. Ethan just sabotaged himself." A strange sensation stirred in my chest. Not satisfaction, not yet, but something approaching it. I had been treated like a pawn, but now it was evident I was the cornerstone. The entire deal balanced on my name, my relationships, my work, and Ethan, he had no idea. "I'll be in contact," Graham said quickly. "I need to address this." The call ended. I set the phone down slowly and stared ahead. The anger I thought I'd suppressed began to simmer. Not hot, fiery rage. No, this was colder, sharper, more concentrated. He hadn't simply made an error, he exposed himself, and now he was scrambling. I took a slow sip of coffee and felt something shift deep within me. This wasn't finished, not even close. At 8:02 a.m. the following morning, my phone began buzzing. First came a call from Ethan. I ignored it. Then HR, legal, marketing, one after another. Missed calls accumulated like bricks, and I allowed every single one to reach voicemail. My inbox flooded with messages marked urgent in capital letters, but none contained an apology, not even a hint of acknowledgement. Only panic. And panic was a language I understood well. I prepared a second cup of coffee and sat in the identical spot on my couch from the previous evening. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting elongated lines across the floor, but I felt no warmth, only clarity. Ethan had made a fatal mistake, and the company recognized it. By 9:17 a.m., a name I hadn't seen in over a year illuminated my screen: Chloe Morales. Chloe and I had been close when she served on my team. She transferred to marketing following a promotion, and though we drifted apart professionally, I always trusted her judgment. "Brooklyn," she whispered when I answered, "you won't believe what's happening right now." "Try me." Graham just entered the main conference room mid-meeting, carrying the Paragon contract. Ethan was there, attempting to bluff his way through the final preparation with the executive team, and Graham he slammed the binder on the table and asked one question. I held my breath. "Did you read this before you fired Brooklyn?" she said, her voice trembling. Everyone went dead silent. I closed my eyes, imagining the scene. "And Ethan," she continued, "he tried to spin it, said something vague about realigning strategy and how we needed more agile roles or some garbage. But Graham wasn't having it. He flipped to the clause, the one that names you the sole negotiator." Of course he did. I'd fought to have that clause added after the Corel disaster, where a last-minute personnel change nearly cost us a multi-million-dollar client. Graham had supported me then, and clearly he hadn't forgotten. "Ethan went pale," Chloe added. "Like I've never seen someone drain color that fast. It was bad." I exhaled slowly. What did Graham say? He said, "If the deal collapses, your position becomes negotiable." Then he walked out. I let the words sink in, feeling a quiet shift in the atmosphere around me. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about leadership, about competence, about everything we pretend companies care about but rarely act on until they're forced to. Chloe hesitated. "I don't know what you're planning, but everyone's watching." I thanked her, ended the call, and sat motionless for an extended period. My phone kept buzzing, voicemails, texts, desperate pings on LinkedIn from people who had ignored my emails just last week. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a blank email draft, addressed it to Graham, typed 3 lines. "I'm willing to return to assist with the Paragon negotiations under specific conditions. Please confirm a time to meet privately before I re-enter the office. Brooklyn Harris." I hit send. Then I stood, got dressed, and put on the same heels I wore the day I signed the Zurich terms with Paragon. When I arrived at the office just past noon, I didn't take the back stairwell like I used to. I walked straight through the front lobby. Every eye followed me. The receptionist nearly stumbled over herself. "Miss Harris! Brooklyn, I mean. Mr. Whitmore is expecting you." The hush that fell over the floor was unmistakable. Desks stilled. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. I walked past them all, the same people who'd kept their heads down when I was escorted out, and I didn't flinch. Let them see me. Let them remember this. Graham was already standing by his office door when I arrived. "Brooklyn," he said simply. I didn't smile. I didn't shake his hand. I just looked him in the eye and walked inside. His office smelled like oak and old tension. He closed the door behind us. "I made a mistake," he began. "I thought giving Ethan some real responsibility would help him grow. I didn't expect him to set fire to the house before learning how to hold a match." I sat down, legs crossed, steady. "And yet, here we are." He sighed and slid a folder across the desk. I reread the contract. Every word. "You were right to insist on that clause." I nodded once. "I'd like you to return," he continued, "with full autonomy to finish the deal, and whatever conditions you need, we'll meet them." I let the silence hang, then replied, voice even, "I'll come back, but I want it in writing. Full control over Paragon, no interference from Ethan, and one more thing." He waited. "This can't happen again, not to me, not to anyone." He met my gaze. "You have my word." When I stepped back into the hallway, Ethan was standing at the far end, pretending to talk to someone. His eyes found mine. I didn't stop, didn't blink. But as I passed, I saw it, the first crack in his armor, and I knew this was far from over. My return wasn't quiet. I arrived like a tempest concealed beneath serene skies. When I stepped into the boardroom at 12:58 p.m., 2 minutes before the Paragon delegation's arrival, everyone inside grew rigid. The space was occupied by department chiefs and senior managers, most of whom had avoided my gaze just 7 days prior. Now they smiled with excessive eagerness, nodded too frantically, and several chairs even shifted to create room, as if closeness could erase their previous silence. I didn't sit. I placed a single printed copy of the final agreement, clean, annotated, and translated, on the table. Then I withdrew my notes and began examining them quietly, page by page. Speaking wasn't necessary. My presence delivered the message. Beyond the glass walls of the boardroom, I spotted him, Ethan, pacing. He appeared agitated, like a child waiting outside the headmaster's office. Every few moments he peered through the glass, then turned away, his phone in hand, tapping nervously, waiting to be summoned, waiting for someone to emerge and declare, "We can't proceed without you." But nobody did. At 1:03 p.m., the doors opened and the Paragon delegation entered. 5 individuals, crisp suits, even sharper gazes. Leading them was their CEO, Hadi Masri, a man renowned for his zero tolerance toward disorder. I greeted him in Arabic. His eyebrows rose, surprised, then softened with something resembling respect. "You remembered," he said with a subtle smile. "I never forget what matters," I replied. The meeting commenced, and it was flawless. We reviewed every clause, every term, every translation. I anticipated their concerns before they expressed them, answered every inquiry without consulting notes, clarified legal language, offered culturally appropriate alternatives. I had performed this in my sleep for months, but today I did it with fire in my chest and steel in my voice. At exactly 3:11 p.m. we signed. Hands were shaken, documents exchanged, smiles shared. Paragon was ours. After they departed, the room remained quiet. Everyone regarded me as if I had just caught a falling aircraft and landed it on the rooftop. Graham approached, eyes brighter than I'd ever witnessed them. "You saved it," he said, voice filled with something approaching awe. "You saved us." I looked at him. I didn't save anyone. I simply did what I was hired to do, what I should have been permitted to do without interruption. He nodded, understanding. No defense, no excuses, just recognition. I stepped out of the room and for a brief moment saw Ethan again. He stood frozen near the elevators, face flushed, lips pressed into a rigid line. We locked eyes, and for the first time he appeared uncertain. Not angry, not smug, but uncertain. Because he knew, everyone did, that what he attempted to erase had just become the company's greatest victory. But I didn't smirk. I didn't gloat. I simply walked past him like he was exactly what he feared becoming, irrelevant. In the days following the Paragon deal's signing, the office transformed. People smiled more, laughed louder in the break room. Emails came with exclamation points again. On the surface, it felt like the company had drawn breath after nearly drowning. But beneath that calm, I sensed something else. Pressure, like a floorboard ready to crack. Ethan had vanished for several days, on leave, according to the polite company-wide memo. No apology, no accountability, just a convenient disappearing act. I knew better than to believe he was gone permanently. Men like him don't vanish. They reload. By the following Monday, he had returned. Not in meetings, not in the spotlight, but around, present, lurking. I'd pass him in the corridor and he'd offer a tight, mocking smile as if we were co-stars in some twisted office drama only he could direct. I ignored him. I had work to accomplish. I threw myself into rebuilding trust, meeting with shaken teams, clarifying objectives, streamlining messy workflows that had suffered during the chaos. My calendar was packed, my energy laser-focused, until the first glitch. An email I sent to finalize a client's pricing tier bounced back. When I checked the thread, I realized someone had altered the document I'd attached. The numbers were wrong, wildly wrong, and the timestamp showed the edit had been made using my login from a workstation I hadn't touched in weeks. Then it happened again. A compliance form I'd submitted for a regional partner came back flagged, claiming I'd omitted required signatures. I remembered signing every field. I had the original PDF, but the one in the system, completely blank. At first I questioned myself. Maybe I was rushing. Maybe I'd made an error. It happens. But then I found the email to HR, the one I had never written. It said I was struggling to manage stress post-reinstatement and asked to reduce my workload until further notice. It was signed with my name, sent from my account, except I didn't write it. That was the moment I knew this wasn't clumsiness. It was war, a quiet war. I reported it immediately. It ran a security check. No external breach, no malware, no phishing. The messages had originated internally from shared terminals. Someone inside the company was using my credentials to make me appear incompetent. And I already knew who. But I didn't say his name. Not yet. I needed proof. So I began to document every discrepancy, every glitch, every edited file. I created a secure folder, updated it daily. I started logging entry times, camera footage, locations, even small details like when Ethan's assistant started working late without any meetings scheduled. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't vent over drinks or whisper in elevators. I just waited. Let them think I was spiraling. Let them believe I was too tired, too rattled, too overwhelmed to see the threads. I had learned this strategy the hard way back in my first job out of college, when a senior director had tried the same game. He'd isolated me, fed the narrative that I wasn't a team player, and orchestrated a slow bleed until I walked away, humiliated and replaceable. But I wasn't 23 anymore, and this time, I was ready. Still, there were moments that cracked me, like when I heard Ethan's voice in the conference room late one night, talking to a junior executive who didn't know I was nearby. "She's unraveling," he said casually. "Too much pressure. Paranoia. I think we need to start planning for succession in client strategy." The other voice hesitated, but she landed Paragon. Ethan laughed and nearly lost it. "We can't bet the company on emotional outbursts and ego." I stood frozen just beyond the glass, heart thudding. It wasn't just sabotage, it was a campaign. He was turning my success into an illusion, one stroke at a time, like smearing fingerprints off glass until no one remembered who left the mark. That night, I sat alone in the glass strategy room, the same one where I'd signed Paragon, and stared out over the city skyline. The lights blinked without care, indifferent to the silent war I was fighting. And I thought, how many others has he done this to? How many strong, competent people have walked out these doors in silence, blamed for problems they didn't create? I remembered the names, colleagues who had vanished quietly, one after a realignment, another after an HR misunderstanding. No one ever questioned it. We just moved on. But not this time. Not me. This time, I would not disappear. The email came at 7:41 a.m. Subject line, Audit Review, Final Session. Sender David Lynn, Lead Internal Auditor. Message: Mr. Whitmore has requested your presence at the executive review this morning. I closed my laptop without replying. I had already decided I was going, not to defend myself. Those days were over. I was going to watch the truth come out. At 9 a.m. sharp, I stepped into the executive boardroom. The walls were glass. The tension was not. Graham sat at the head of the table, quiet and unreadable. David and two auditors were already inside, along with two board members I hadn't seen in years. At 9:06, the door opened. Ethan walked in. Late, of course. He looked surprised to see me. That smirk twitched at the corner of his mouth. "She's not on the audit committee," he said, settling into a chair like this was just another performance. "She's here at my request," Graham replied without looking at him. David started calmly. "Over the last 3 weeks, we've identified multiple instances of internal credential misuse. Access to shared terminals, document tampering, unauthorized email dispatches. This is a waste of time," Ethan cut in. "She's upset because David didn't flinch. "Every digital breadcrumb led back to a device used almost exclusively by your executive assistant. Same IP address, same timestamps." Ethan shifted. "You're reaching. She's been unstable since she came back. Everyone's seen it." I looked him straight in the eye. You tried to erase me, I said. You sabotaged my work. You weaponized silence and let people assume I was the problem. But I tracked every step, every edit, every login. You didn't just try to destroy my credibility, you tried to rewrite history. Ethan's face flushed. You're delusional. Graham finally stood. No, he said. She's not. You are. The room fell silent. I gave you chances, Graham continued, voice low but firm. Too many. I wanted to believe you could grow into this role, that maybe the ambition was real. But all you did was tear down the people who carried this company through its hardest seasons. He turned to the board. The evidence is clear. He's not just a liability, he's a threat to the integrity of this company. David nodded. Our recommendation is immediate termination. Ethan looked around the room, searching for an ally. He found none. What? You're just going to take her word for it? He snapped. No, Graham said. We're taking your actions for it. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. The smirk was gone. All that remained was disbelief. Security was waiting outside the door. When he realized what was happening, his shoulders dropped. No final tantrum, no dramatic exit, just quiet defeat. He walked out of the room without a single glance back. When the door closed, no one moved for a moment. Then Graham turned to me. I'm sorry, he said simply. I shook my head. I don't want sorry. I want better. He nodded slowly, thoughtfully. Then let's make it better. And for the first time in weeks, I felt it. Not victory, but relief. Because the truth was finally louder than the lies. 2 weeks after Ethan's quiet exit, the ripple effects were still unfolding. His name was never mentioned in meetings. His office door stayed shut, untouched. But the energy inside the company had shifted. Lighter, clearer, like the entire building had finally exhaled. I didn't celebrate. I worked. I reorganized the client strategy department from the inside out, streamlining systems, rebuilding fractured relationships, and quietly bringing back 2 talented team members who'd left under creative differences. I held open-door hours twice a week, and slowly people started coming in. Not just for tasks, for conversations. Some wanted advice, some just wanted to say thank you. One afternoon, Graham called me into his office again. I've been thinking, he said, placing a folder on the desk between us, about the future and about who should help shape it. Inside was a new contract, Executive Vice President of Strategy and Culture, a role that didn't just report up, it reached across. My voice would help guide not just clients, but internal policies, hiring standards, even leadership training. I looked at him carefully. Why me? Because, he said, you've done more for this company in the worst conditions than most people do with a blank check and a safety net. I didn't give him an answer right away. Instead, I took the weekend. I walked the city, spent time with my sister, sat alone in the park and thought about the girl I used to be, the one who stayed silent to keep the peace, who smiled through unfairness, who believed her work would speak for itself if she just stayed quiet long enough. That girl deserved better, so I gave her better. On Monday, I signed. Not because I needed a title, but because I wanted to change what leadership looked like from the inside out. I installed an anonymous reporting system, created a mentorship program, sat down with HR to rebuild how internal investigations were handled. And when someone came to me quietly with a trembling voice, afraid to speak up, I listened. Because I knew exactly what it felt like to wonder if anyone would. 2 weeks following Ethan's silent departure, the aftershocks continued to ripple through the organization. His identity was never referenced in discussions. His office entrance remained closed, undisturbed, yet the atmosphere within the company had transformed, more buoyant, more transparent, as if the entire structure had finally released its breath. I refrained from celebrating. I focused on work. I restructured the client strategy division from within, optimizing processes, mending damaged connections, and discreetly reinstating 2 gifted team members who had departed under artistic disagreements. I conducted open access sessions twice weekly, and gradually individuals began appearing, not merely for assignments, for dialogue. Some sought guidance, others simply wished to express gratitude. One afternoon, Graham summoned me to his office once more. "I've been contemplating," he said, positioning a folder on the surface between us, "the path ahead, and regarding who should influence it." Within lay a fresh agreement: Executive Vice President of Strategy and Culture, a position that didn't merely report upward, it extended laterally. My perspective would help direct not only clients, but internal protocols, recruitment criteria, even executive development. I examined him thoughtfully. "Why me?" "Because," he stated, "you've accomplished more for this organization under the harshest circumstances than most individuals achieve with unlimited resources and complete security." I didn't provide an immediate response. Instead, I claimed the weekend. I explored the city, visited my sister, sat solitary in the park, and reflected on the person I once was, the one who remained silent to maintain harmony, who smiled through injustice, who trusted her contributions would demonstrate their value if she simply remained quiet sufficiently long. That person deserved superior treatment, so I provided it. Monday arrived and I signed, not from needing recognition, but because I desired to transform what leadership represented from within. I established an anonymous reporting mechanism, developed a guidance program, collaborated with HR to reconstruct how internal inquiries were conducted. And when someone approached me discreetly with a wavering voice, fearful of speaking out, I paid attention, because I understood precisely how it felt to question whether anyone would listen. This narrative isn't merely about professional conflict, it concerns dignity, about reclaiming your value when others attempt to strip it away. Brooklyn didn't prevail because she voiced objections more loudly. She succeeded because she remained anchored in her identity, collected her strength in silence, and struck with accuracy when the truth became undeniable. In a reality where authority frequently shields itself, she demonstrated that integrity, planning, and composed resilience can alter the equilibrium. So what's the teaching? That professionalism doesn't equal weakness, that self-control doesn't mean capitulation, and that when you recognize your value, you don't need to plead for recognition. You construct your own platform. If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or made to feel insignificant in a space you helped establish, this account is for you. You don't always get to select your conflicts, but you do get to determine who you become amid them. And sometimes, the most powerful action isn't to retaliate in fury. It's to emerge composed, lucid, and undeniable. Have you ever encountered something similar in your workplace? What was your response?